Week 9 is all about conflict and resolution. It is that 1 week that most students go, ooh, I don't want to discuss it. I know from my Myers-Briggs and knowing myself, I avoid conflict at any cost. But if I can think about conflict as an opportunity to clean the air, to really find out something new about a person I care about, and to state my feelings on something, and then hopefully to build a better understanding with mutual respect and have a stronger relationship. I have many examples of that's exactly what's happened through the decades I've had on this planet. You might not have as many examples to draw upon. So you look at literature and you watch movies and you think, well, how did these couples do it? Conflict is part of drama. Every relation starts off what they call the honeymoon stage, when everything is sparkly and everything is great. And this could be a boss, a roommate, a neighbor, a romantic interest. It's always great in the beginning. And then inevitably, sooner or later, there's something that is what they call a conflict, a disagreement, an obstacle, like an impasse. And like, uh-oh. Sometimes not so great. Maybe your neighbor is parking in your parking spot or something like that, and you can easily resolve it. Or maybe it's something a little bit more serious. So it ranges in intensity, but it's going to happen. And it's how you resolve the conflict, which really will talk about the future and the strength of that relationship. My daughter says, observing me, that I give in too easily, that I will say yes, yes, just to have harmony. And I know that's a weakness that even at my age, 65, I am still working at, because I know that's not healthy for anybody. So it's hard to. Sometimes we just are too tired. We say, yeah, go ahead. But when we don't resolve something, it comes back to us. And we probably have seen that, like, unresolved conflicts from decades ago can sometimes cause divorces. So if you're dealing with things as is, of course, when they come up, it's the best thing. Of course, this is an ideal world. You know, as Julia T. Wood said, that interpersonal communication is not a panacea. And even though you may say, I know what to do, we're going to really listen to each other. And we're going to take turn taking, and we're going to negotiate. We're going to figure out each person's needs and wants and come to some common ground. Well, that sounds great, but that doesn't always work. So you have to be the change that you want to see to happen. And it's baby steps. When I was watching the students who participated in the takeaway, I was really emotionally moved by some of your reactions that you said, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or, oh, I've got to correct this. And it's not going to happen overnight, but being aware of it is huge, from body language to use of cell phones. It's huge just to know that, okay, something to monitor. I'm not always going to be perfect. There'll be times I still use my cell phones when I'm with my children. That's okay. It really is. It's that awareness, and you will be doing it in baby steps, less and less, and you'll become a role model for others. Okay, back to week 9, conflict. I start off with a flow chart by Dr. Tanya Israel, and you might say, what does this even mean? Well, you have to listen to the podcast. Now, this podcast is just listening. It's not our discussion board, and it's 25 minutes. But I really thought the content is germane to this class in this time. She is doing this podcast before the last election between Trump and Biden, and where she's saying how the country was very polarized and people were taking sides. Well, here we are, spring 2021, and we're still taking sides. The masks, the vaccines, when we can open up, how loose are we going to get with the restrictions? There are still sides, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's so political, although many times it still is. But there are conflicts within families, within friends, and these need to be addressed. So please listen to Dr. Israel's podcast, Tanya Israel, and then I printed out or posted her flow chart that she refers to. Now, if you take the time to read through that flow chart out loud, you are going to start to see patterns of behavior that maybe you've even seen in yourself when conflict happens. Do you ask questions? Do you take time? Or do you have emotional reactions? Do you just blow up and storm out and refuse to deal with conflict? And that happens in many families and in many interpersonal relationships because it's hard and we don't know the rules. So in this class, we're not going to have all the answers, but we're going to start thinking maybe there is something I can do to change my situation. And as you read through the chart, and I'm not going to read it to you right now because you can read through, please take this seriously because I really like the way she gets you thinking. And for me, it reminds me that there are things I can do when there is a conflict. And this is a concrete thing to do. So I put it in there because I feel of its great value. And then when we have her podcast, which is, please just listen to it. It's part of the course. You may, even if you don't get tested on something, it's part of the course. And then we have the transcript because it was there, so I put it in there if you want to read it. And then our discussion board on restorative practices. And I really do like the idea of optimism with conflict and realize how normal it is and how it's not an indication that there's something wrong with your relationship. In fact, healthy relationships have conflicts. And at one time, a psychologist friend said, Joyce, you want everything to be perfect all the time. That's so unrealistic. You even have conflicts with yourself. Aren't there times where you just get so exasperated with yourself and say, I have to work this through? And do you just give up on yourself? No. And you're not going to give up on your relationships too. So listen to the podcast, look at the flow chart, and then discussion board on restorative practices. Please really take time to listen to this. You may be thinking as you're watching this of a specific relationship or a conflict. I'm still having my conflict right now with my birth sister. We weren't raised together, and we didn't meet until way later in life. I was in my 50s, she was in her 50s, so we didn't develop that sister-sister relationship, but we both want to be friends and in each other's life, but we've had some conflicts, and I think we're both a little stubborn, so I'm going to think of her once again. You know, there's this saying that I believe in, to teach is to learn twice. Every time I am with you on this interpersonal class every week, I am actually a student as well. So I'm not perfect, and I'm still improving things and trying to take responsibility. Now, my relationships now are a lot healthier than they were 40 years ago, for sure. Absolutely. And I wouldn't be the mother I am today without really taking a hard look at my communication style. So I know I've done work, but I also know life isn't perfect and new things come about that you never expect. On the journal, you have to have listened to Dr. Tanya Israel's podcast to understand the questions in the journal. So take a hard look. Do something nice for yourself this week because when it's upsetting to talk about conflicts. We want to say, no, our relationships are great, and hopefully they are. And maybe there isn't any one specific example. So just take that chapter in, or take that weekend as like a scientist. You're just there to observe. But I bet you will see examples of what they'll be speaking about in other relationships. And if nothing else, you'll see it on the 11 o'clock news. So have a good week. It's almost Easter. Spring is here, warmer days, and here we are talking about conflict, but we can't avoid it. All right, signing off. I think about you all the time, and thanks again for the takeaways. I can't tell you how much they mean to me. There will be another one, and they were very heartwarming and very genuine, and I'm very proud of you.